Check 2212. Check 2212. Okay, we're set. Okay, now we can get started. So we're going to continue designing this property. So right now we're working on the render. We also have the property here. I need to redo the trees. So what we're going to do first is amend this atrocious ground cover. So we're going to go here, look for natural ground, nature. We're going to do forest ground. Now, the unfortunate thing about this program is you don't really have good painting in terms of how you can spread things, and it's a bit annoying because then the texture comes out like that. So not ideal, but we can get it looking a little bit better if we manipulate the color settings. Okay. We don't want to make it too dominantly green, so we can drop the luminosity. And it's, not perfect. Obviously, it still has a lot of detail. We want to roughen it up and make it look a little bit more natural, because this is going to be the base. This is going to hide under everything else. So the more detail on a scale that we can provide, the better it will actually look. We can play around with this later, but in the meantime, now it's more important to get the land looking a bit right. So this one, if we do that, it should, right, fix that, and then we have now we have a pretty clean template. There's just a bit more to fix here. There we go. Now we have a much cleaner base. So what we're going to do is adjust the area. That would be the forest here. So we're going to pretty much remove everything. When we added this layer, there was a lot more that didn't exist on the map. But now we obviously want to populate it. So for the most part, the woods are actually pretty simple, right? But there's actually even a slightly better way to do this. We can do a scatter and do a similar range of trees. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect, just more or less representative. So we'll get plants that do visually belong in this particular region. Again, this is in Virginia. That's Northern Virginia, in a deciduous forest. So I think some of these trees are actually very appropriate. Unfortunately, they don't have any beech trees or sycamore, and they only have a couple different oaks here, but they work. I wish they had pawpaws here, but sometimes you just gotta deal with what you have. Hello to the other people watching. Thank you for your support. I'm trying this out, and this idea is to create something that I can reference later, or people can understand the process. I'm trying to get the hang of this streaming thing. It's pretty fun. There's a bit more pressure because this is also currently a design project, and there's obviously quite a bit of work to do. So check back in later if you don't watch the whole journey, and you'll get a better sense of how this will look. Right now, I'm just getting a little bit ahead of the curve and actually creating the renders so that once I finish the design, we'll be there. But for the most part, these trees are going to go a long way without impeding the rest of the design. So that's the kind of thing we like to see, and it's going to go a long way for the visualization. My goal is to also figure out a way to augment this and have it in VR, so I could just pull it up on my phone and then show a client this, or even have a way to bring my laptop and then use my Xbox controller so they can move around it like a video game. And I think that would be a tremendous use case for this. Okay, so we're just going to attempt a minor vegetation. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. It's just convenient to add some life, right? You don't want something so plain and base. But now we can take all of this. Unfortunately, you can't hit Control A here. Very unfortunate. But once we do that, we get this population. And let's make it a little bit more dense. Actually, I think that's a bit appropriate right there. I think that amount right there is ideal. But we have to zoom out a bit. Okay, so that's a decent approximation of the actual property. So we're going to turn this off. We don't need those resources at the moment. We are going to use this to confirm. Okay, so that creates a fairly accurate portrayal of the property. So there's obviously still a lot to do, but now you begin to get a better sense of what the land actually looks like. So let's go ahead and rename this to Forest V2. Organization is essential on these projects because, man, it gets complicated. So we're going to add a couple more vantage points, but we want to continue making this look a little bit tidier. So let's get some materials in just to satisfy the paint a little bit. So we want landscaping, and these colors are not going to be final. These are just going to be representative. So when we actually get to the house, or get to the painting, then it's not Hello, thank you for tuning in. I am a bit focused. I'm going to try to narrate some of this. This is mostly a chance for me to try and stream things, talk about the design process a bit. Right now, I'm currently preparing this model of the house to migrate down towards the land. Um, this is so interesting streaming because I've never streamed before. I'm so intently focused, and then I happen to notice when someone's watching, it's like, oh, hi. Do I talk to you like a one-way conversation, or do I keep focusing and trying to narrate? But in any event, here we are. right now I'm currently modeling this house, and even though it's not strictly necessary, it really helps the entire design when you have something that's pretty faithful to what actually exists, which is why I do try to replicate it. I would like to start doing my own drone captures, because then I could create what's called a point cloud, and I could essentially scan the entire house and then upload it as a file and then have it here. That would really be amazing, because then I'd be able to bypass a lot of this. Even though the point cloud is not perfect, it does create an opportunity to have a far more accurate design. So we've got the beginnings of the house. I'm going to come back and render it later because I have to constantly reference the pictures. But, this creates a fair representation, which makes the rest of the process much easier later on. So now we want to find the low point of this and bring it down so it just floats on the landscape. And that would appear to be right here. And then what we're going to do is move it up a teeny bit. And now it's above the terrain. And now we can drape it. So essentially what that's going to do is cast a form below, and then that will give us a of course I can't quite get it to work at the moment. Now, obviously, the terrain, for the driveway is not quite this much of a shift. Each of these lines is separated by 2 feet, but we want to have a realistic driveway. So what I'm going to do is bring the house and property down and then have that merge into the landscape, and then the driveway I'm actually going to drape so it matches the landscape. But I can't seem to get it to work right now. I'm not sure why. think we're gonna have to do a little workaround. I'm having an issue at the moment. But I have an idea. Um, it's odd. What I'm trying to do right now is actually get this to merge onto the landscape, but the software is giving me a problem right now. This is not usually the case. It's quite annoying. I'll have to figure this out later. It's not mission critical right now. I'd rather focus on actually completing the design and these renders. Very happy with how many people have tuned into this. I really didn't expect anyone to watch, but I appreciate everyone who's tuning in. Feel free to comment or anything if you have any questions or concerns, you want to see anything. I'm trying to figure this all out as I go along. Window, glass. There, that gives us a fair bit of texture that kind of blends in. Hello everyone. I'm not sure if you're a returning viewer or not, but all the same, thank you for tuning in. I'm currently working on a design project where I'm rendering the home and the garden because we're going to be working on the actual renders pretty soon. I need to create the house, which ironically is going to be the most extended part of this entire process, but ultimately the most rewarding because it provides the most levity and gravitas. Now, all these colors are going to be placeholders. They're not going to be the final result. We have another strategy for that. So instead we have here now the garden beds. Point 2. Very narrow cordon steel. Right now I'm duplicating the cordon steel edging throughout all of these raised beds because this is going to be one of the most important areas. But we do need to actually find something that looks like cordon steel. So what we can do here is generate a darker color. Again, this is going to be more of a placeholder. So browns are always around the reds. So this is around the range that you want. So this will be adequate for our purposes. And oh, it's transparent. Okay, we don't want that. I did not realize we were working with a translucent metal. Oh, I see, I made it. Right, of course, it's so obvious now. How did I not see it? Okay. And that is a decent cordon steel substitute. Okay, great. So now we've got the raised beds all created, and we can go back and then add the dirt because right now these are all pretty bare. So that's one of the things we're going to be rectifying in the spring once we fix it. We're going to use this stone as... Actually, I just hate when the color is so mismatched. These colors are simply representative. Okay, so the garden is now quite a bit more faithful. Obviously, the next big item are all these posts. We want this to be wood. Now, the difficulty is there's actually a bit of a slope with all of these. So we have to measure them a bit more to actually get a fully accurate rendition. So for the meantime, we're going to go to the stone, add this, and do a foot, because on this side it's actually a bit lower. So what we're going to do is keep this elevated, because we'll be able to manipulate this here. Right, so we've got a fair representation. This is now pretty faithful to the base. So these white boxes are going to be raised worm beds. So they'll actually be composting systems to replace an existing one, and these are raised beds. So the cool thing is, this needs to be fixed, I see, that now this is all completely to scale, and if I actually turn on the controls, I can walk around this like a video game, and this all has real hitboxes and everything. I just have to fix some of these renders, but you know, when you step back and I just have to figure out what here is grouped. So now we can move this entire thing as one entity, almost. Sometimes it takes a bit of finagling. This is something I can go through and fix later. This is not really interesting to stream. It's just going to require some file tidying up, but that's the name of the game. So I actually had a site visit with the client today, and we're going to be moving this row of trees elsewhere because they actually disrupt from the sight line over here. And I see that a couple of these trees are not totally accurate. Something like that. That's a bit more realistic. So now we're on the ground level. If we look at the mediums, right? Now, these are placeholders. We obviously have a lot more. This is where the barn is. This also has to be rendered. But you might have noticed that we're actually missing grass, so we are going to add some. However, right now it'll go under the house, and that's going to create an issue for later. So this is something we have to fix in the other software first. So we need to essentially replicate this on why is this not working? Of course, I'm getting a funky issue. Nothing ever works that easy. There. That is actually pretty good. We're just going to need to modify the land so that it rises up, because this is actually flat with the terrain. It's not a huge difficulty. It's actually quite simple. But I'm getting a tremendous amount of lag right now. Well, we've made a lot of progress today. There's obviously a ton more to do. The main thing is to get these pretty accurate to the design and then get everything else placed, because once that's accomplished, then we can have a faithful idea of how things are going to look. This feels very realistic, even just standing right here. I have a lot more detail work to do. Same with the property. We're going to add grass. It's going to feel very realistic. This is just a flavor for what's to come when you have the forest and the ray tracing. This actually does feel pretty fair to what you'd see, except we're missing the grass. So that's going to be coming soon. I just have to fix the issue with my software that is making it currently lag so much, but all in good time. So I think that's a fair point to end the stream. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching, everybody. I see 4 people now. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for checking this out. It's my goal to do more of these and share the process as well as what goes into it, and then maybe even answer some questions. I find that this is a good way to show what I'm doing and be transparent, but also try to provide some interesting content. I think this is fun, you know, when you design a homestead and you have all these elements that come together and make this beautiful place. I'll show some pictures and what the landscape actually looks like once I get this done, so there can be some comparisons, because at a certain point it's like, wow, this is actually a 3D render that looks pretty realistic. When you have path tracing, I know it's not impressive now because there aren't many plants and things to have shadows, but you get something pretty photorealistic. So I will be continuing this later. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.